Hello everyone, this is ClouD giving you Game 2 in a series between ESC's Delphi and MYM's ClouD. Game 2 taking place on Terminus Re, or Tal'Darim Altar, excuse me, not Terminus Re, that was Game 1. Yeah, so Game 1 on Terminus Re, Game 2 on Tal'Darim Altar, ClouD spawning as the blue Terran player at the 7 o'clock position, or 8 o'clock position. Meanwhile, we have Delphi spawning at the 4 o'clock position as the red Zerg. So this is going to be Zerg versus Terran. And this map, I would normally say in Terran versus Protoss favors Protoss, and in Terran versus Zerg favors Terran, and in Zerg versus Protoss, not 100% sure, I would say I would give it to Zerg just a little bit, just because of the way this natural expansion is right here. This natural expansion is very, very wide open, and then you also have a very wide ramp. There is also no ramp going inside your base, a rather wide opening. So this rather wide opening allows for a lot of 4-gate pressure, but the reason why I tipped this map in favor of Terran against Zerg in particular is because of how exposed this mineral patch is to just low ground siege tanks here. Zerg players normally like to expand very early, trying to get up that second hatchery, as that second hatchery, in addition to being able to mine more minerals, allows you to train up a larger army. So a larger army could be set up, and it just increasing your standard mineral count anyways. So, but siege tanks in this location are able to just shell out damage and giving a lot of damage towards this hatchery here, possibly destroying it. Roaches on the high ground trying to counter it don't have a very easy time, as Marines are able to support, and then medevacs are able to gain sight, kind of elevatoring units up to this high ground. Now we are going to see ClouD opening up with building his barracks over here closer to the ramp. This is a pretty common strategy. This is a rather large map, so we're also going to see ClouD now moving around with that SCV in order to try to scout out his opponent. The Marine is going to be trained up, and we'll see what's going to be happening with this Overlord. The Overlord should turn around just in time and try to get back up onto that high ground location there. There is one Marine now, and only one Marine, as we are now going into a 16 command center. So 16 command center without gas. Overlord sees the barracks. I do not believe the racks actually saw the Overlord. And that Marine is just going to sit off in that position for a little while longer, as another Marine buddy does train him up. The drone now doesn't need to try to scout, as the drone just going to come back over here in just a moment. And now ClouD is going to have a little bit of time before he even figures out where Delphi exactly is. You can see the drones were transferred just a little bit too early, and now finally coming back over here. Queen going to be added to this army off of one base, or one extractor gas. Metabolic boost should be coming online in just a little bit of time. Marines still being trained up here. We are now going into that double gas build that is very common by Terran players after a 16 command center, as an Overlord now tries to make its way over, and the Marines getting some damage onto that Overlord. The Overlord, however, able to just hide in this high ground brush over here. One of the benefits for Zerg is that Reapers cannot jump up onto this high ground. This is untraversable terrain, so the only way that Overlord would be revealed is if he actually lifted up the barracks, and that would actually be a pretty smart move. If he actually lifted up the racks, moved over his Marines, he may actually be able to shoot down this Overlord and get it shut down, especially since he isn't really training anything off of this barracks right about now anyways. We are getting roaches being trained now, so Delphi may be able to move out with a very effective roach harassment, considering that his opponent hasn't really built anything else. ClouD now going into double factory after this. So he needs to get a lot of siege tanks in order to fight back against those roaches. Those roaches are going to be able to eat apart any sort of Hellion harassment that ClouD may try to do. I would be surprised if he actually tries to go for Hellions. A Tech Lab, hopefully he will go for Hellions and siege tanks and rain damage down over here, like I mentioned earlier. Income-wise, 900, or the Terran player definitely having an advantage just because he does have mules, and he is also having an advantage in gas as well, two extractor or two refinery gas, as opposed to one extractor gas, or yeah, one what is that? One geyser gas, one one geyser play. Anyways, barracks still being placed down here, and now both sides just playing it very safe as we are training up Hellions. So Hellions now coming out from Cloud. Perhaps we're going to see 4 Hellions move out, get on a roll, and try to deal some of that damage. You can see the Overlords are correctly positioned over here as well, making sure that no Reapers will be able to jump into that location here. Barracks now being added to this front door, making it even more difficult for units to get in and deal damage. The problem is that roaches, if they try to put pressure on this front door right now, would be able to deal damage towards these buildings without really suffering any damage at all. The Hellions are too far out of range, the bunker is too far back, and then Cloud would be forced to lift up his barracks, and then a sea of Zerglings could just swing in from behind. Cloud now sitting at 51 over 62. He is sitting on 34 Harvesters compared to 39, as this one particular barracks is just being lifted off and repositioned time and time again. We are not getting any Marauders just quite yet. Still just... still no Marauders, just some Siege Tanks finally, as the Hellions look to deal some damage. Hellions were not successful last game. We'll see if Cloud does better with this particular strategy this time, as he drives up that ramp now, able to easily torch one of those Zerglings. But yeah, 6 Roaches over here, going to be able to intercept and stop that, but the Cloud... Then again, Cloud knows that he just wants to clean up those units, and now going to come in through that backdoor location. That should be a significant amount of damage. Delphi, he does see these Hellions, so the units are going to make their way over, and now Roaches coming in to intercept. So those Hellions now backing off as that acid saliva eating through the light armor of those Hellions, those little Doom buggies with flamethrowers on top. Oh, someone asked me why in StarCraft 2 players don't use their favorite units, Fire Bats and Vultures. That was actually only in the single player campaign. There are no Vultures, there are no Fire Bats in the multiplayer portion, as they would just share a lot of roles with Hellions and Marauders. Fire Bats being like a decent armored unit on the ground. On the ground, it was kind of your front and facing infantry unit. Anyway, Siege Tanks are now positioning themselves, making sure that if any units try to bust through that front door, it's not going to be successful. And Cloud does have a significant army advantage at 600 resources, but a lot of that is just these 6 Hellions that haven't been really able to deal any serious damage at all. Poor Zergling once again getting toasted. Taking a look at the total losses, so far you see 1 SCV loss, or perhaps 1 Marine loss, compared to a lot of Zergling losses so far, but no real damage has been dealt to either of these players, as the Roaches now coming in to engage against those Hellions. The Roaches have to be very careful trying to fight back against, the Hellions have to be very careful trying to fight back against a Roach, since the Roach does have a decent amount of range now, range 4 compared to a Hellion's range of 5. The Hellion, however, doesn't attack nearly as quickly once it stops. It usually takes a decent amount of time, as I now hear Banelings being hatched over here, in addition to this waterfall. So yeah, Banelings now being hatched, 14 Banelings and movement speed upgrade. That is going to be very, very difficult for those Marines and those Hellions to really do anything. But now we are going to get those Siege Tanks sieging in right here. As I mentioned earlier, is enough damage going to be dealt? The Siege Tanks are positioning themselves in a little nice spread now, as the Marines may try to elevator themselves up this ramp. And this almost feels like I've cast this game before. So yeah, Marines now being dropped over here onto the high ground. They're going to be able to start dishing that damage as well. There is an expansion over here by Delphi. A lot of drones have been transferred over, as the Hellions are now going to try to move in. The Roaches need to try to pull back, though. They are not going to be able to really survive this fight. There are a lot of Roaches moving around, as the Banelings are now on a roll as well. The Siege Tanks and Roaches have to be very careful here, as the Marines have finished off the expansion, and now the Banelings rolling in, doing a lot of damage. The Roaches now trying to shut down the Siege Tanks here, as the Hellions fight back against the rest of those Roaches, and it looks like the Siege Tank was successful in clearing out this location here. And now the Medevac looking to perhaps try to do another drop and try to get more drone kills. We are getting 1 Queen and a lot of Roaches nearby. That is not a place for Cloud to try to drop any of his units, as now the Siege Tanks are continuing to battle it out. These units need to drop down, need to try to fight back. Siege Tanks are unsieging. Marines now fighting back against those Roaches now, as both sides battling it out, but still, it looks like Cloud will be able to take this game with relative ease, as Cloud now making its way over with these Marines and drones. Drones coming off the mineral line, and are just sacrificing themselves into this location here and simply getting destroyed. Drones now surrounding and taking down some of those siege tanks, but that is not a very even trade at all, especially as more units are coming in to reinforce, and ClouD easily taking this game 2 here. So thanks for watching, thanks for listening. Hope you guys enjoyed game 2 in the series between Delphi and ClouD.